All right, we are live. What is going on, everybody? Big D here from Williston Audio Labs. As always, here with Rob Vega from High Five Vega. What's going on, Rob?
Yo, 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 what's up?
Yo, yo. And we are graced tonight with the presence of the great Mr. Jeff Smith from AAMP Global. Jeff, how's it going, man?
Good, man. How about you?
Doing great. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule with life, work, family, all that good stuff to join us to talk about car audio and BMX. We greatly
Man,
appreciate that.
no worries.
Well, cool.
Anytime.
We are going to jump right in because we have so much to talk about. You've got a long history with car audio. You've got some fun stories to tell, I know. And also, we want to talk about some of your riding BMX at over the age of 40 and talk about that as well. So, let's just start from the very beginning. Tell us how you got into car audio and like who was your influence? Was it a friend? Was it a family member? How did all that work?
Um, Getting into cardio, man. I actually walked into a shop uh back in the early 90s. And my sister was getting a system done in her car. And it was amazing to me to see this CRX sitting on the floor in this store. And I walked over to it and there's all these huge trophies around it and everything else like that. And I asked the guy, I'm like, what are these trophies for? And the guy said, car stereo competition. And I was like, what? It didn't make sense. It didn't click at that point in time what he actually meant. And we actually sat in the vehicle, listened to it, and it blew me away. And these huge trophies, I mean, they're 4.5, 5 foot tall trophies. They were for like fourth and fifth place for this particular vehicle. CRX took fifth place at ASCA finals that year, back in the early 90s. And it was the showpiece for this particular stereo shop in Birmingham, where I first got into the industry. Then from there, I pretty much started going to the shop every day because my sister's car was there getting the system put in it. And I started hanging around every day as much as possible and kind of became, the hangout place for me. From there, of course, digging more and more into the magazines, which I had already kind of started reading a little bit before that and kind of knew a little bit because back then we had all the big magazines back in the day, Car Stereo Review, Auto Sound and Security, Car and Electronics, all that stuff was big and popular. I mean, you could go to your local grocery store and buy those magazines at that point in time. Where now all of our magazines are pretty much, on the internet, like Pass Mag. That's really the only thing we have these days. But from there, it led to me getting a job at another shop called Audio Systems. And from there, I was graced with the talents of one of my industry buddies that's still in the industry, uh, Mike Hall. And he was a big SPL guy. And what's really neat about Mike is that our shop got a lot of the good brands in the area because of Mike and also from another installer that worked with us named Rob Peoples. So they were like polar opposites. Rob was the loud sound cue guy, and Mike was the just straight up SPL loud guy, but he did some sound quality stuff too as well. Um, Derek, what's really funny about Mike is that Mike actually got us Savard. We were the only Autotech Savard dealer around our area in Alabama, and we sold a lot of Savard, a lot of Savard stuff. And I know you guys have, doing the old school meet and everything like that, you've come in contact with all the old Savard stuff and all the new stuff as well too. And they've made a name for themselves again. But yeah, we sold lots of Autotech, Rodec, Savard, all their Bandpass boxes, the High Q, the Rap, and built a lot of stuff with those guys. And they actually helped us get into a lot of the USAC stuff we were doing, going down into South Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, different places, doing all the USAC competition stuff that we were doing. And from there, I built my first competition car, which was the pictures I sent you of the gold Honda Civic. That was my first attempt at a competition car. That was my 91 four-door Honda Civic with USD horns, Servo Vega mids and subs. I had Soundstream amplifiers in it, Pioneer, forget what model. It was a cassette player, but the cassette player had CD changer controls. So I had dual CDXM30 6-disc changers, one under each seat. So you could change the cartridge out while you drive, so you wouldn't have to go in the back and get to your CD changer back there. That car did pretty decent for me. It kind of taught me a few things, kind of learned a little bit on cutting my teeth on building boxes, wiring and stuff like that. The back seat of that car was probably the my favorite part of the entire car, because you'd fold the back seat down and you'd see all the audio control gear flushed into the back of the car, into the back of the seat. So yeah, that one right there. So I had a Epicenter, ESP2, and I think that was a EQX in the back, flush into the back seat. So yeah, it was pretty neat.
So
Yeah, Rob approves of the sub, by the way.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
So that was your first competition system. What was your first system that you had in your vehicle that you can remember, anyways?
Oh man, the first system that I had in my vehicle, my very first vehicle was a '79 Chevy Caprice. Right, it was the hand-me-down, big four-door sled, But that car had a Pioneer shaft radio in it. It had, I don't remember the brand of 4x6s on the dash, but I remember saving up to get a pair of Targa 6x9s to hang in the back deck.
Had to have the 6x9s.
Yep, had the Targa 6x9s, and I was learning the whole bass thing, so the whole subwoofer thing was new to me. I had figured out how to wire up a power booster, the little EQ power booster deals, right? And the easiest car stereo equipment to get was either from Radio Shack, right, all the Optimus stuff, or you could get, anything you wanted that was Pile, Pyramid Gold Series, any of that stuff. There was tons of that stuff at the local flea market, stuff like that. But all the stereo shops, they were around, and like I said, I saved up once I realized that the cheaper stuff wasn't the way to go, and I started buying little stuff here and there. The first real amplifier I ever purchased was a Pioneer GMH50. So that was the first real amplifier I bought, and that amplifier lasted me for a while. And what was crazy is I had to drive super far. It seemed super far at the time. I had to drive really far over to this shop on the other side of the city in Hoover, Alabama. And it was called Audio Creations by Tenham. And they were the huge Pioneer Premier dealer in Birmingham. And they were the only people that sold Pioneer Premier. And I would be that kid back in the day. There wasn't the internet, so you called, there was phone books. You were looking at all the stereo shops to see what brands everybody had. And then once you convinced your parents to take you somewhere, my older sister, take you somewhere to go visit all these shops, you figured out, who sold what, who to talk to. Pretty cool. So now with the internet, kids don't even have to leave the house,
No, I think the thing that, a lot of people don't take account of is back in the day when you're talking about the budget gear, the Pyramid, the Pile, whatever, the difference in the price between that and getting the Rockford, the Autotech, the other stuff was so drastic that
super drastic.
A lot of us had to go that route.
Yep.
I mean, because you had to save up for months and months, and this is before we used credit cards all the time too. We had to save up our money, mow grasses and do whatever. And then it took a lot of discipline, but you learn, just like you said, you learn pretty quick that it was worth it, to save and be able to get something that the quality brands. Because these days, there might be the difference in the prices are kind of closer in a lot of ways. But yeah, back then it was a big difference.
Remember one of the other guys that worked with me, Tommy Heitch. He was the first guy I ever encountered. Actually, he worked with me at the shop. He spent the most amount of money I had ever seen someone spend on the brand new Sony. I want to say it was a U8000 CD player, and I was like, "Why? Like, why? Why would you?" It says it only plays one CD. Like, why would you do that? But man, that CD player was amazing. It was
Yeah.
really nice.
They were
Yeah.
killer. I think a lot of us kind of started out in the flea markets because it's less intimidating. You can go in there and see the budget stuff, and you're like, okay, I got money for this, and then you finally graduate up to a shop once you've been through that.
Yeah, and they just had 1,000-watt stuff everywhere too. So I mean,
Yeah.
you got so much more for your money back then.
Yeah, yeah, it was weird because like I tell guys now that whenever I'm talking to guys, like I remember literally there was a kid in our neighborhood who had probably his name was Cameron. He had one of the loudest vehicles around, and it was Chevy Blazer. And once I figured out what Cameron had in his vehicle, I was like, really? And it was two Kenwood 921 two-channel amplifiers, and he had a Kenwood full range box in the back of his Blazer, and it was two 12s, two mid ranges, two horns, and it had two speaker terminals. So he literally had a 921 bridge to one side and a 921 bridge to the other side. And it was amazing. Blazer, it's just a speaker box. So it carried, like everything was just amazing. And I was like, Kenwood amplifiers. Like, so I had to figure out who the Kenwood dealer was in town, because I didn't see Kenwood around where I was, Kenwood was not the main thing. So it was another shop on the other side of town called the Car Stereo Shop. They were Alpine and Kenwood. So yeah.
Yeah, he hit you with the piezos. That's what got you.
Yeah. But those full range boxes were the thing back in the day. You had, it was literally a three-way passive setup in a big enclosure. Sub boxes weren't just sub box. I mean, you could buy that, but Rockford had their prefab full range boxes. Kicker had their box. That's where Kicker literally started. Their Kicker boxes. It had a subwoofer, and the horn tweeter was on top, and the port to fire it from behind the back seat of a truck. So, yeah, old school, man. I'm really dating myself now.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of hatchbacks back in the day too, and those, like you said, those type boxes could really get loud. Even though all the sound was coming from behind you,
Yep.
they were pretty efficient too. They didn't require a lot of power. I had a friend that had a Pulsar NX hatchback that had a Kicker Super 2, and he had a Punch 45, and it'd blow you away. So it's just, not a lot of power to push a lot of sound.
The thing about the punch amps back in the day, and I learned about those as well, is that they had the two punch EQ knobs. So that's literally what gave them the advantage over everything else. You got 45 hertz bass boost, and then you got that, I want to say it was 10K on the treble side.
I think it was actually higher according to the patent they got. It's 20K was the higher end filter, so it was a little bit higher. But yeah, you're right. There were some of the few that actually had any kind of adjustments on the amp, and before bass knobs.
Yeah, well before bass knobs. Everything was full range. So
that's right. Passive crossovers everywhere.
Passive crossover. It is funny. I was just talking to someone the other day because in my project, I was testing some stuff out, and I had to order some parts to build a passive. And the guy was like, "You seriously building a passive crossover?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "With all the DSP stuff that we have," and I was like, "Slow down. Like, I'm trying to do it old school. I'm trying to do a legit old school build, and it's a lot of work to build passive crossovers today because the parts are not readily available. I mean, they are, but I mean, it's not. It's a lot of work. It's a ton of work. So DSP is just so much easier, but I'm trying to make it work. So we'll see how it goes.
We'll be interested to find out
I think
what you got going on.
Even the home audio guys are starting to figure out, hey, maybe I'll just use a DSP instead of spending ever how much time and money building a passive crossover for my towers.
Yeah, because back in the day, so like we talked about earlier, so I work for AAMP Global. So AAMP Global, we own PAC, Pacific Audio Accessories. So PAC was the company back in the day who sold all those components, sold all your caps, your coils, all your inductors, and everything else. And there was a poster in our bay on the back of the door that showed you what components went together to make a sixth order, 12th order. I'm sorry, 6 dB, 12 dB, 18 dB, 24 dB. And you would walk over to your bin and you would pull your parts out and you would look at the diagram and figure out how to put your passive crossovers together. So back in the day, lots of people, not people, but companies. Rockford was really big. All of their stuff was called Perfect Interface, if I remember correctly. All their install parts. Orion had a ton of passive crossovers and everything else, separate bridging modules. And so back in the day, honestly, we worked harder to make the systems as loud as they were back then. And I mean, it was just different. The amplifiers were just raw monsters. I guess that's why we still all love all of our old school stuff, because we remember how insanely loud and dynamic everything was back then. But it was a lot of work. I mean, if you literally gave today's installers the majority of the products we had back then, they would literally be scratching their heads, not even knowing where to start.
Yeah, a lot of the amps didn't have crossovers built in. I mean, you had to have everything external. So it
Yep.
required a lot more components. There were a few amps, I guess, way back in the day that had crossovers, but definitely it was not the norm. Most of them didn't. So since you brought it up, I'm going to go ahead and ask you the question about that, because I know you've been in car audio for quite a few years, 20 plus years, and I'm sure that you've come across or either have a piece of equipment that you have that you would never give up, that's going to be buried with you. What would you say that is?
Um, that will be buried with me. Um, Hold on one second. I'm talking to my daughter, Claire. Can you hand me that box that's on the counter in there? This is go around the counter, and the box is toward the end of the count. No, the brown box at the end of the counter. The whole thing. So this is part of a system. Um, yeah, this is probably the most unique piece of equipment that I've purchased in the past few years of collecting old school products in order to build this retro system in my Prelude. So everything in my Prelude from the system coming back is Alpine. And one of the things I've been wanting for a long time, ever since I've ever saw it, was this particular piece, because to me, it was the pinnacle of everything that went with the Alpine Digimax system back in the day. So I have the 7618 cassette player. I have the 3681 EQ DSP from Alpine for the Digimax system back then. I have 5957 S CD changer. And all of that stuff was purchased, offline. And I sent it out to Vintage. What's the name of his repair? I want to say it's Vintage Alpine Repair um, on Facebook, and he repaired and restored and recapped and did all that stuff for me. But the piece that they're going to literally bury me with is my Alpine steering wheel.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. So this is a steering wheel that was co-produced between Alpine and Momo, and it has a infrared remote built into it. So, and it will still do your horn and everything else like a normal vehicle, but the infrared remote will control any of the Alpine products. So volume up and down, track up and down, CD changer, all the stuff that, you would want to be able to do from a steering wheel, because back in the day, those vehicles did not come with steering wheel controls. So once I found that guy for sale, I worked with the guy overseas. This thing actually came out of Malaysia. So I worked with him. Come to find out, the guy who had it, actually, that's his entire business, is old steering wheels and old car parts and things like that. On Instagram, his name is Spokes and something. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look now. But yeah, it was that's my baby. That's that's my
Eric,
big.
didn't Craig have one of those in one of the pictures he showed us?
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, you don't see
Yeah.
those often.
No,
Yeah,
you don't see them very often. That's
yeah.
really cool. That, like you
So
said, that's going to be a pretty cool piece to add into your system you're
yeah,
talking about doing.
I have a lot of old things. I have lots of amplifiers. Lots of amplifiers. Derek and I were talking earlier, and I showed him a few of them, and they're stashed in all different types of places around here. But I have over 40 M series amplifiers. So I have at least, I want to say I have at least three of every normal M series amplifier. So M25, M50, M44, M100. I have at least three of each one of those, plus many, many multiples, and then I have multiples of the limited editions. So Route 66, Bandits, Outlaws, and then I have a one-off amp chassis that no one else in the world has. So hold on one second, Claire. Can you hand me that white piece of metal, the really long one that's over here on the floor?
Just
Van,
don't drop it. That's good.
Van, Vanna White's helping me here.
I'm telling you, man, you're putting them to work.
Yeah, I keep all this stuff.
So
And,
while she's bringing it over, help me understand the M versus the MS, because I was always an MS fan. And he's cringing his face. That's beautiful.
so what
Wow.
this so what this is, right? This is so the Route 66. If you guys don't know about the Route 66, so the Route 66 is an M25 and an M44 in the same chassis. This was going to be the original version of the Route 66, but it was too big. So instead of making this version, they went back to the 25 and the 44. What this version is three M50s in one chassis. So there is not another one of these in existence. So this is the only one, and it actually bolts up, and I have all the components to put it all back together. So this may be one of the ones that gets buried with the steering wheel with me.
And how long is that piece? That looks like it's about 3 feet long or so.
It's a little bit longer. I want to say it's about, yeah, it's probably about 3 feet because it's wider than typical shock tower, right? Between two shock towers, because I can't put it between the shock towers and the Prelude. It's wider than the back of the Prelude. So yeah, I've had to come up with alternative installation areas for this. So yeah, we'll talk about it. But the difference between the M series and MS. So the MS was the highest end series at that point in time in the early 90s. The MS was more expensive, higher power. I shouldn't say higher power. It was the most advanced amplifier at that time. That was the entire purpose of what Keith Peterson, Larry Frederick, and the rest of the guys there at PG in the original days. They wanted to build amplifiers that were so far above and beyond what everyone else did. And they had a philosophy of what I've always liked to call clean underwear, right? Clean underwear is when you can take the bottom off of an amplifier and show the guts, or you want to show behind the panels on your install. You know, a lot of guys didn't show their wiring back in the day because it was a rat's nest. A lot of amplifier manufacturers never showed the inside of their amplifiers because great components, the layout was horrible, the surface mount parts were, just thrown on all type of places, but PG did everything just amazing, so that's why they always showed off the insides of their amplifiers. So what happened with the MS series was it was really good, really great, did awesome for PG, but they realized that there was a marketplace for lesser expensive amplifiers. So what they did was they took out some of the flash from the M series, I'm sorry, from the MS and MPS series, and made the M series. If you ask Larry Frederick, I talk to him multiple times a year. and he'll joke and he'll tell you the M is for moron, so that way you could hook it up to almost anything at any load and it will play, because those MPS and M series amplifiers have probably the best protection circuit you've ever seen in an amplifier, like literally straight arc welding. I mean, you remember the old ad with driving a nail with the M25? Because literally the amplifier would go into protection, reset itself, and go right back to playing the speaker. So it was an amazing technology back in the day for those amplifiers.
Yeah, I remember, Jeff, when the MS-250 was first shown off, and it was late in '89 in car audio and electronics, and it was like a
Yep.
tease for when they were coming out. And man, as soon as I saw, like you said, they showed the internals, and I've got, for those who are watching on the stream, I've got a picture up of an MS-275. Those are always with the gold-plated circuit board. They had the colored wires, they had the colored transformers, they had the caps, everything kind of flowed color-wise. So back then, these were like the dream amp. I know for me, and I know the MS-250 was like $600 or something. You
Yeah,
know,
so the
it was,
MS-250 turned into the 275 because the 250 was that light gray color. That was the first, that chassis amplifiers that were the light gray. That was the first gen. So you had a 250, 2220, and the MQ430, 2125, and a 2250. So they were all that matte. I'm not gonna say matte gray. It was like a very weird gray color to make an amplifier. Then the second Rev B came out, and that's when the amplifiers went to the white chassis. So, and the
yeah,
250 turned to the 275.
right. And I've got some of the old MS. You're the M guy. I'm the MS. So I have
Yeah,
some of those. They never kind of left my desires to gather more. You know how it is when like you said, you're looking for one amp and then you find another, and then before you know it, you got 10 of them.
that's exactly how it happened, man. It was literally like I was explaining to you earlier, like when I was buying that 144 from Matt Green off of the PG forum on Facebook. He was like, I have another one. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I still have my original M25 that I had for years. And now I think that's probably, I have more M25s than anything else. I want to say I have 10 or 12 M25s. So,
The
yeah.
M25 is pretty beastly. I actually did a little amp dyno drag of the M25 and the Punch
Yeah, I
40i.
remember that. I've watched it a
That
million times.
Yeah, those two, man, they were really close. That's a lot of fun. The
Yeah.
funny thing about doing a video like that is it doesn't get many views because people these days just don't understand. But you know, like way back then, I would have killed to have an amp dyno to be able to do this type of testing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had a lot of fun making it, even though it hasn't gotten a lot of views. I'm glad you added 10% there to my view count for that. I
Yeah,
appreciate
dude,
it.
I've watched all those, the M20, the 40 versus the Punch 40 versus the M25. You have one on the M100. You've never done one on the 44, never done one on the M50. So whenever you're ready, let me know. I'll ship you some amplifiers.
You better
Cool. We'll
watch
have to
out.
do.
He's got a way about testing the amp that sometimes doesn't end up right. Just as long as I'm not around, I'm sure it's fine.
No, we have these stints of just having problems and amps blowing up, but hopefully we'll catch one on
it
video here
happens.
soon. It
It
does.
happens. Yep, it happens.
So with all that, do you have? Is there any piece of gear that you like always wanted and you never obtained over the 20 plus years you've been in car audio, or not?
So, there's a few actually. Of course, the holy grail of CD players, Alpine 7909. And I had the opportunity and still have the opportunity. A friend of mine, Gerald Costa, has one in pristine condition. He has the anniversary model that came out, came out in the late 90s, the L version, 7909L. And but man, these things, I don't know if you guys look at eBay and the forums. These things are $2,000 plus, for these CD players. It's insane. But the 7909 is definitely probably one of those holy grail situations. From there, equipment wise, it would probably be the Sony XES system. That was a really neat piece. You had a dedicated head unit, dedicated EQ, dedicated crossover in the first gen of XES. So it was really, really neat. I never got to, play with one of those guys. Equipment wise, that's probably, I've been around a lot of equipment. That's probably the only thing I ever wish.
You still there, Rob?
Now from testing, joked with.
There we go.
There's a piece of test equipment I've joked with all my connections at Audio Control. Do you remember the IASIS? So the IASIS was a combination of basically what the auto de-equalization features that a lot of people have in their DSPs nowadays. So the IASIS, you would put it in your vehicle and you would take it through all the sweeps and all the different testing that it did, and it would tell you the ideal crossover point, the ideal crossover slope. It would tell you the ideal time correction, and it would tell you exactly how to do everything in a car in order to set it up properly. And I've only ever seen one of those actually at a store, and they had no idea how to use it, but they would not sell it. So, and I've joked with Chris Bennett now that he's there running the mobile section for Audio Control. And before Chris Bennett, there was Chris Kane. And I always joke with these guys, like, there's got to be an IASIS, like, still left on the shelf, like, tucked back in the corner, like, somewhere. I mean, even though, nowadays we can do most of that stuff on our own, it's a little bit more difficult to, for some guys. It was just one of those pieces of equipment that was just, like, mind-boggling, that it would tell you everything to make your system just ideal. But I never knew exactly how perfect it would, give you all the information. But from a scientific standpoint, it would look at speaker dispersion, speaker, roll off and everything else. And then it would recommend crossover topology, crossover slope, crossover point, and all your EQ adjustments and everything else. It was really cool. It's called the IASIS.
Wow. So, I bet it was better than it's got to be better than the 80 PRS. They got the mic thing where you can set it up and it does the auto EQ and all that. And you go through that and you're like, what did they do to my radio?
Yeah. The auto EQ features in a lot of those Pioneer head units, it actually, you have to move the microphone to different locations. If you just strap it into one location and do it, sometimes if you don't like that response, you can move it to another location and get a little bit better response. Same thing with like the newer, larger style things, like if you have a Audison BitTune, and JBL's thing with, they had the what was their processor with the headphones?
I remember, but I can't remember the name of it either.
Andy Waymeyer's piece.
Yeah, the MS8.
Yeah.
Yep.
JBL MS8. Yeah. So all of that stuff, all of those pieces that would auto set up, and pre-EQ your system for you. So they all have their function. You just have to learn exactly how to use it to your best ability.
Yeah, for sure. But before we jump into the newer stuff, I have one question that's kind of off script here. The bad caps, the batch of bad caps. Do you have any insight into that? Like, when was it? How soon were they going bad? Or
in the PG amps?
Yeah, in the Phoenix Gold amps.
So basically what happens is these caps, the power supply caps, and a lot of these amplifiers, a lot of them would just go bad from age, because of the actual materials that they were made out of. So I would pretty much say any of the PG amplifiers that are pre 2000. No, I'm not going to say that because we had ZXs and all that. So if it's an MS, MPS, Mac, Macs are rare. You could, I don't see many, but I guess the ZXTIs, some of those I've seen with cap issues. All the original old school 2002 and olders, um, I've always, seen all the repair guys, whether it be um, Jason Campbell or Jason Janita, and I'm sure Sean King and all those guys, who do all the repairs for a lot of us online. They pretty much repair, constantly swapping out bad caps, blown caps, and everyone recommends if you buy an old school amplifier that's pre that time, specifically the Phoenix Golds, um, don't fire them up. Make sure you crack them open, replace the caps before you even fire it up, because you could literally cause a fire. I've seen what a cap looks like when it explodes, and if it explodes the wrong way and blows through your circuit board, it's a wrap. There's no repairing those sometimes. So
Yeah, that's for sure. And luckily, the big, beautiful blue caps that they had, those seem to be okay because, I mean, you just can't replace the look of those caps. And, those kind of set the piece off with, I mean, the Phoenix Gold amps are just beautiful on the inside. So it's a shame to have to do anything to them.
Yeah, but that's one of the things about it. Like even all the old school stuff nowadays, I mean, just have someone who's knowledgeable and who has a reputation and who can show you the work that they've done. Just don't let any bootleg guy off the internet, because you can believe everything you read on the internet, right? I've done a million of this. No, find someone who's reputable, who's done them, because every amplifier, like I have over 40 M series amplifiers. Every last one of my amplifiers has been completely recapped, new op amps, all the gain pots cleaned out, replaced if it needed it, and everything else. Every last one of my amplifiers is in pristine working condition. So make sure old school stuff. I mean, you got to do it in order to keep old school stuff around.
Yeah, it's no different than having an old car, right? You don't just get an old car and just start driving it. You have to do the maintenance. But definitely for sure, the Phoenix Gold amps from that time era, the MS, the M's, the MPSs, definitely make sure, because I've had, like you just talked about, I've known several people who didn't do that and they've actually had the amp catch on fire. So go ahead and protect your amp. That's a good idea.
Have
Well,
you ever seen any of the other brands, like older, like Punch 45s, older, like Crunch 50s, and any of the old school stuff? Any other brands?
Not to my knowledge, Jeff, but I think that's the reason Rob asked the question, because we were under the assumption that it was literally a batch and a time frame that but I'm sure it was across the industry. It would not have been just Phoenix Gold.
Um,
But
It
I
was the Panasonic caps is what it was. It was a
Yeah.
batch of Panasonic caps.
but it ran for a very long time. I just think the Panasonic caps, they didn't have a good shelf life, because once you got past so many years, those amplifiers just, I mean, I've opened up amplifiers where they weren't leaking and everything seemed to be fine, but I still would never power it up. You instantly just know that it's got a date on it at some point in time. It's going to go at some point in time, so just replace them.
yeah, that's true. It's better to be safe than sorry as far as that goes with the older amps.
Even the
So,
head units and processors, get all that stuff out of
the
there.
head
Yeah.
units and all the little capacitors that are in head units, yeah, those guys that do that repair,
Did you
they
see
can have it.
the photos I sent you of the head unit Brad Owens did for me? Dude, it's nuts. I don't have the patience to do all those little capacitors. That's crazy.
You sent me the outside. Did you send me? You didn't send me the inside, did you?
I thought I sent you a couple of the shots of the circuit board with all the capacitors being replaced.
Oh, I need to let me get back through that. I'll look. We'll have to find that for sure.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears just a little bit. I mean, I'm sure everybody that's listening, and I know Rob and I could go on all night talking about the old school stuff, but let's switch gears a little bit to talking about your career with AMP. And I know AMP brought back Phoenix Gold because Phoenix Gold, kind of was known as the old school company, and they kind of wanted to rejuvenate the brand and things like that. So tell us a little bit about working for AMP, how long you've been with them, and kind of the idea behind some of the changes at Phoenix Gold.
So I've been with AMP since 2013. AMP's the third manufacturer I've worked for. I worked for Mytech, MTX back in the day, and also for Zapco. So the deal with AMP bringing Phoenix Gold back to the limelight was in 2002. Phoenix Gold was sold to a company called Rodin. Rodin actually took the American company that everyone knew as one of the top 5 companies out there. And it was a public company at that point in time. So you had a lot of investors and everything else. And Keith Peterson, the original owner, didn't have sole control over the company like previously. So when they sold the company, Rodin took the company and basically went overseas with it and basically diluted the name, right? So there was a lot of off the wall weird products that came after that that were a little different from what Phoenix Gold previously had done. And those years, this is when, you know, a lot of the lower tier products were making more sense for dealers, and the industry was going through its time of lesser expensive products. This is back when Audioban was king, you know, MA Audio was king. So you saw lots of really inexpensive amplifiers that said they did 1,000,000 watts, you know, for $20. So that's kind of where they went with some of their amplifiers. They still tried to stay true on a few designs, like the Roadster 66 and the Xenon, the amp you showed me earlier, Derek. There are a few different models that they tried to stay true on that, but in the mid 2000s, I'm sorry, early 2000s, 2008, Keith was still involved with the company overseas, Keith Peterson, and he reached out and was looking for, you know, someone to buy the company off of Rodin's hands. And it just so happens that AMP was looking to get into the audio cardio field as far as that goes, because previously they were just doing distribution work and the Pack and Stinger and things like that. So they worked that deal out, and officially in 2009, AMP purchased the rights of Phoenix Gold and all the assets of the company. And what's really weird, and this was probably once I came to AMP and found out the actual story of what happened, there was so much old inventory that AMP actually brought in as part of the purchase of Phoenix Gold. And Derek, when I tell you my heart sank when I heard and saw the amounts of old, like original OG PG stuff that came, and they sold it by the truckloads for next to nothing, pennies on the dollar, because it was just nothing. So it's funny when you messaged me about being on the show. If you go back and look at that message I sent you back in 2014, right? I found a container full of old heat sinks and amp shrouds and everything else. And I was trying to like put them out there to try to help people who were refurbishing their amplifiers back then, like do something with them. So I literally went through all these crates, found as many parts as I could, and I had them all organized and everything else. And since I'm in a training position and I travel, yeah, there we go. See reactor parts, I mean, everything. So since I'm in a training position, I travel a lot. And I actually went on a training trip for a while. I was gone for a bit. I was out of the country. And I came back and 3/4 of that stuff disappeared. So where that stuff went, I can't tell you. But it either went in the trash or it's up in the rafters in one of the warehouses somewhere. Like those are brand new heat sinks for the M series stuff, Z series, I mean, everything. There was tons of extra stuff. But Derek never answered my message back in 2014.
This is so embarrassing because when I went to send Jeff a message about joining the show, there was literally a message from 2014. I think I can probably show it here. Right here, 7/4/2014 at 8:39 p.m. He sent me this message. I don't know how I missed it, but somehow I missed it. I did not even see this. And then look, the last one was Friday, this past Friday. So 5 years later, I sent him a message. Hey man, you want to be on the show? What did I just miss? So I'm going back through this like, what? Oh my God, I can't believe that. But
oh man, we got to shame you for that.
absolutely.
5 years. It took you 5 years to answer. Then you asked him to be on the show.
Yeah.
It's downright embarrassing that I missed that. I mean, I get a lot of messages and it just didn't pop up.
It happens, and if you're not friends with someone, you don't always see the notification. They all go into that little corner, and you physically have to go looking for them to find those messages. So yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I hope that that stuff is still around somewhere.
Well, if I come across any of it again, I'll definitely make it happen.
You
Cool.
know, speaking of that, I'll kind of bundle these questions together. How do you think nostalgia plays into car audio nowadays? And the Zen 9, did you have any part in that? What was up with that? You got a story about it?
So nostalgia plays a lot depending on the manufacturer. Like, just look back a few years ago, Rockford re-released the Punch series. When they did their anniversary series. So that was big, for the Rockford community. Um, we tried to do a bit of a throwback. I really fought for the cosmetics of the SX2 series that came out a couple years ago. So if you were to look at the SX2 series versus an M series, other than the bases of the chassis being black and white, the M series being white, the SX2 being black, that was kind of a throwback cosmetically to the M series. The fact that you have the gold heatsink fins at the top, all your terminals are single ended like the old M series were. So that was kind of where we came up with the design cues for that. I really put Kevin Kunze's our director, not director. His title is general senior product manager. Sorry, for Phoenix Gold, and that was kind of one of the things. And also the Trilite. Trilite's been around for a really long time at Phoenix Gold. Trilite was just indication that the amplifier was on. But with the SX2 series, we actually made the Trilite more functional, whereas it will turn different colors to let you know if you have a blown fuse, if you have a shorted speaker or speaker wire, whatever is being shorted, or if the amplifier's got a bad ground or sensing too much input voltage. Then the TI3 series, this is a series that Derek talks about a lot with the power shift feature. So the TI3 series, if you look at the cosmetics of it, it actually looks like the older reactor and that series of amplifier where you still had the gold heatsink there, but with the mesh of the amplifier over the heatsink and with the plexi window to see inside of the actual circuit board. So that was really design cues that all came from old school amplifier designs from back in the day. Now the technology very different because nowadays it's actually more efficient and easier to make bigger power with the Class D format. So all of these amplifiers are full range Class D, and a lot of people, they have their own ideas about Class D, but some of the photos I sent you earlier, Derek, my '96 Accord, that car had 9 100-watt monoblocks, full range Class D amplifiers, one on each driver, and I did extremely well with that particular install. So Class D can sound good. There's lots of manufacturers out there whose Class D amplifiers sound absolutely amazing. Is there a difference between Class AB and Class D? You really have to have an extremely discerning ear on a high quality Class D in order to hear the difference. But that was the answer to the question on the design cues of old school throwback. But as far as the Zen 9 project, I was around from start to finish. The Zen 9 project actually started off an 8-channel amplifier. It was a joke. John Catalano, myself, and Morgan West. Morgan West was the last original Phoenix Gold employee from the original company that was still with us under the original designs of the Zen 9. So it was originally an 8-channel amplifier, and I think John jokingly called it Senior Ocho. That was the original, nickname for the amplifier. And then we were like, there's plenty of 8 channels out there, so what about a 9-channel? And we tossed it around for a while, and Morgan went to design table and made up a few things, and we figured out how to make it cosmetically, the features and what we wanted and things like that. And we were able to get a cosmetic rendering completed in enough time to get it to CES to kind of get a feel for what everyone would think of the amplifier, and everybody went nuts. So, and at that point in time, it was one of those things that, okay, all right, let's everybody wants these things. Okay, cool, let's do the project. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand is that from design to concept, from concept to design to actual production to sale, depending on the level of the project, it typically is about 18 to 24 months, depending on, the project. So the one thing that actually probably shot us in the foot more than anything else on the Zen 9 project was the fact that the original design, when it became time to actually start producing boards to actually go into beta testing and things like that, our build house could not get everything to work exactly the way that it looked. So if you can never find one of the original photos from CES that year, and I think I actually still have the original amplifier. I'm almost positive I do. Even if you look at the plexiglass through the window, if you look at the circuit board, none of the components look anything in the orientation like the actual production model, because we had to totally reconfigure the insides of the amplifier in order to actually make it a viable product in order to be, produced. So yeah, it was a beast. It was
Yeah,
a big project.
that amp and the other amps, like especially the ones that are M50 throwbacks, those were cool. Especially, I actually think I prefer the matte black on the gold over the white,
Mm-hmm.
even over the old school. But yeah, those were cool throwbacks. I like that a lot.
Yeah, one
And
of the
how,
neatest features on the TI3s is the power shift. So if you look at the layout of the internals of the TI3s, you'll see that there's 4 toroids inside the amplifier. There's 2 large and 2 small. So between the circuitry design and layout within the amplifier, you can put the amplifier in normal mode. So let's just say, for example, we're talking about the TI3 1200.4. Normal power on that amplifier, rated power, is 225 by 4 at 4 ohms. So, I mean, how many 225 watt 4-channel amplifiers are out there? Hardly none, right? So, big power, Phoenix Gold, we said, we got to flex our muscles. So, this amplifier, 225 watts by 4 at 4 ohms, if you put the amplifier into power shift mode, it takes and it shifts from one toroid, the larger one, down to the smaller one, and adjusts the rails, and the rear one gets the power adjusted to it. So you literally take 50 watts from the front and add 50 watts to the rear. So you now go from 225 down to 150, 150. Yeah, 150. And then the rear goes from 225 up to 300 by 2. Okay. So that will allow you to either adjust your gain structure differently, because now you have 150 watts to either send to tweeters or mids or whatever you want, and then you have 300 to send to your mid bass or your woofers, right? So you can literally, instead of having to do your gain overlap, now you have your power overlap built directly into your amplifier. To take it even further, when we designed and built the TI3 1600.6, the 6-channel amplifier that's available now, it is 125 by 4 and 250 by 2. When you put it into power shift, the front 2 channels go down to 75 by 2. The second 2 channels go up to 275 by 2 up to 150 or 175 by 2, and then you still have your 2 rear channels that are 250 by 2. So you truly have 3 stages of stagger power there. And the amount of technology and time that it took to design and go through that technology to make that happen, that took a lot of work. And that's what the Zen 9 was originally supposed to do as well. The Zen 9 was supposed to have staggered power, but the Class D build of the TI3s made it so much easier than doing it in the AB format. So this is why we had to scratch and redo the front end of the Zen 9 so that all 6 channels across the front were 75 by 6. Then you have your two 150 or 125 by 2, and then your 1,000-watt sub channel there. So in order to make it more stable all the way across the build.
Yeah, we're digging those new staggered powered amps.
Yeah, for sure. And is that, I mean, I've heard of, some of the old school companies used to have the little switch where you could go from high power to high current. Some of them did it automatically, kind of, but that's really the first time I've heard people kind of switching transformers during operation, and that sounds pretty cool. Do you guys have a patent on that, or?
I don't think there's a patent on that, but that entire series of amplifiers, the SX2 and TI3, those amplifiers were engineered with the help of Z Audio. So Stephen Mance helped us with those. So Stephen's a smart guy, built a lot of high quality amplifiers in the industry. He's done the Hyphonics amplifiers, tons of Hyphonics for years. He did the ESX amplifiers. He did the Rodec amplifiers. His own series of amplifiers. He's a smart guy. But they were very different from the previous Phoenix Skull moniker of amplifiers, and that was probably one of the biggest things that when we were working with him, we kind of took him out of his comfort zone because he didn't really understand why we wanted amplifiers to make so much power. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I tested one of his amps not too long ago that he designed. It was the Autotech with the true mono switch where it flipped the output transistors.
Yep.
And all to one side, which was really cool. Matter of fact, I had to call Sean King to explain to me exactly how that worked because I had a slight grasp on it, but until Sean broke it down to Barney level, so I could really understand.
If you really want to lose yourself in an amplifier, find an old ESX.
That's what I meant, the ESX. That's
my God. Like if you don't have a degree from MIT, the manual will blow your mind with all the different switches and configurations. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's really cool. Well, man, we have busted through this hour almost already, and there's so many other things I want to ask. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I did want to hit you with a couple more questions before we end up. First off, the Zen 9, how many of those were made? Did we say that? It was a limited edition run. Was it a couple hundred or?
There were exactly 100 amplifiers made for sale. There were a few more that were made that were unserialized for us as employees because they didn't want us to take away from buying the amplifiers. I would like to say, knock on wood, because I was a part of the project, I do have one of the serialized amplifiers. I have number 75, so that's my baby. But as soon as I got it, that was one of the things I did. Completely had it sent up to our guys at Elite Services in Wisconsin and had them upgrade all the caps and went to extremely high quality op amps and things like that. So even that one was modified. So.
And those 100 are all accounted for? Are they all gone, or is there still available?
There are still a few. Well, I know some of the dealers still have them around, and I want to say that there are maybe still a few around. I would have to ask because I think we were kind of holding a few back for repair parts, and things like that, and warranty situations, but. Who knows? One day you could see, hey, limited edition, Zen 9's back on the block. It'll be like the McRib. We're back.
There you go. Yeah, everybody likes when the McRib comes back. Yeah, exactly. Well, this might be a little bit of a deep question, and I don't want you to have to feel like you have to spend too much time explaining it, but we kind of ask a lot of our guests who have been in the industry for a while to kind of give their idea about this. And I know that since you guys offer a lot of integration components, this is, something that's very important to you. But how do you feel like with back in the 90s when you bought a car, you could just buy a single DIN or a double DIN head unit and pull the old one out, put the new one in. Very simple to upgrade everything. These days, you've got backup cameras, you've got, a lot of the functions of the vehicle are built into the head unit. So, how do you feel that plus the quality of the factory systems has gotten a lot better over the years? How does
Yeah.
that impact, the aftermarket and you guys and trying to sell more products? I mean, I know it's probably a little bit more difficult because people already spend the money when they buy the car to get the upgraded system.
Yep.
But how do you see that affecting car audio overall in the long-term uh, industry of car audio?
I think we as 12-volt enthusiasts, whether it's consumer side of things, the professional side of things, the retail side of things, um, Ford, Chevy, Chrysler, Toyota, Mercedes, BMW, they don't care about selling us a stereo system, right? They want to sell us a car. The stereo is just something to get you by. Yes, they have advanced and have become more integrated into the vehicle, but we as 12-volt enthusiasts, we have to evolve, right? With all these auto manufacturers, because if we don't evolve, we're going to die, right? So it's extremely important to constantly have an open mind to learning something new, because as soon as, just think about something as simple as steering wheel controls. For years there was no, you had a wire, every radio came with a wireless remote, right? Remember? So while you don't, a lot of radios don't even come with remotes now because everything can tie into your steering wheel controls. Remotes are optional, but there's stuff that's as basic as that. But like you said, backup cameras, all of your chimes in the vehicle for your seatbelt, for your lights being left on. There's even safety warning systems for people that leave their kids in the car now. And things like that. But as far as car stereo goes, I think that we are doing an extremely good job of evolving and staying ahead of the curve enough in order for those manufacturers like us, NAB TV, JL Audio with their Tweak, and Audio Control with all of their integration pieces, and all the other companies out there that are constantly getting in cars, constantly testing products, and to make plug and play devices to either get you into certain vehicles or pre-amplifier, right? So from pack side of things, we make a lot of integration devices in order to get you in front of the factory amplified system in order to give you a clean, full range, undistorted 5-volt or optical output in order to get you the ability to add aftermarket amplifiers into a lot of these vehicles. Or we actually specialize in adding head units into some of these modern data bus controlled amplified systems, where we offer our dash kits and our radio pro interfaces and things like that. So there's lots of companies out there, but it's a fast moving learning curve. And the thing about the car market is that when a brand new 2020 comes out, right, there's only going to be a few companies that are ready to jump at 2020s, where the majority of our industry, we realize that the car market or the amount of cars that are on the road, we pretty much specialize in a 11 to 15 year span. So you have to predominantly target those vehicles that are on the road that are in that age group, because those are the cars that are being modified at this point, right? A lot of people aren't going to go get a new car payment just because they want a new stereo or because they want a backup camera. So this is where all of us aftermarket auto car, like mobile electronic companies, are really diving into integrating into these vehicles. So now we're 2019. So look at the amount of 2002, 2005, 2010 vehicles that are being hand me down to the next person in line or found on the used car lot and things like that. So there's lots of integration stuff that's out there, that we constantly have to stay on top on. I mean, look at Ford now with their A2B system, and GM just came out with their new AVB system. And we thought BMW was crazy all those years ago with their first fiber optic amplifiers, right? That's cakewalk now. Now you have complete data bus systems. You pull an amplifier out of a vehicle, you can shut the entire vehicle down now, right? Because the ECU can't talk to the transmission can't talk to the cluster, and I mean, you could pull out something installing a new amplifier in a vehicle and have a bad situation on your hands these days if you're not careful. So I know there's a difference between the do-it-yourselfers and the retailers, and the internet now gives a lot of information to people, but there's a reason why car stereo shops exist. There's a reason why do-it-yourself, places exist. It's the difference between the dealership and AutoZone, right? The dealership, you're going to pay a premium, but those guys are going to warranty your stuff. They're going to deal with your problems, and they're going to be there for you. If you want shade tree mechanic to go to AutoZone and buy the parts and fix it in his driveway for you. You have to chase him down when he's off work, and hopefully he hadn't had too many beers when he worked on your car. So that's the difference between like I tell guys, the do-it-yourself guys and the professionals. But there are some very high-quality do-it-yourself guys. I'm not saying DIY guys are trash, but there are a lot of do-it-yourself guys that really know what they're doing and understand the industry. You just have to get out there and kind of learn for yourself a bit. And in this day and age that we live in, the internet's it's helpful and harmful at the same time. So you got to kind of know when to get off of it.
Yeah, anybody who wants to do this themselves, they should watch Dean and Fernando. Dean puts out so much content, but he does a great job. I think his original intention was to help people kind of do this themselves, but then if you see some of the complexities that he deals with, like you're talking about, and he does it day in and day out, I think it even sells their product much better as installers, because they know how to do it because they work on it every day. The rest of us, hey, we'll look it up on the internet and try to go pull the amp out. We don't know what's going to shut the car down, right? So that's a great point. I think that's probably one of the best examples I've heard of making sure you use your local car audio dealer. You keep your installers, keep them around, because if they're not around, then how are we going to do this? And if we can't do this, then how are the car audio companies going to stay around? So that's great, man. Well, look, we have completely eaten up the hour plus a little more. I've got so many more questions I want to ask you, but I think what we'll do is we'll try to get you back on sometime if we can do that, and we can go through some more. I know you got some homework to help get done and things like that. And we greatly appreciate your time tonight spending with us going over all this. And everybody who's listening here to the podcast version on either Google Play, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, make sure you check us out on youtube.com/12etalk. Subscribe to us there. Make sure you check out phoenixgold.com. Check out some of their products. Check out AAMP Global. You can see some of the Stinger accessories they have as well. Make sure you check out some of these amps with the power shift technology. Maybe we'll talk to Jeff about getting some of these in to look at for my channel so I can show everybody. Definitely. But it'll be fun to do that sometime. But anyway, again, thanks, Jeff, for your time. I think, Rob, we have maybe a couple people to go over with here for the super chats.
Yep, I've got them down. You want me to read them off?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Our dude Brad, Legends of Car Audio, the Third Era, Gene Nava, and our guy Sean King came in at the last minute. Thank you all.
Sounds good. Well, Jeff, again, thank you for your time. We do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we had a great time talking. Like I said, I got so many more questions. You're so great to give us your time to do this. And thanks for everything you've done for the community as well. You've been in the community for many, many years and done lots for the car audio industry, and we appreciate everything that you've done and helped grow also. Rob and I try to do the same from a different aspect, but we do appreciate guys like you that are out there grunting every day, trying to make this work, and we're on your side, man. We really hope that we can keep this going, because it's in the best business for all of us. So anyway, thanks again for your time, and till next time, 12 Volt Talk. We're out.
Later.
Peace.
All right,
man. That was cool. All right, so we'll go over just a couple questions real quick, because I know you got to jump off. Does anybody, if you have any questions that you've asked, just ask them again so that they'll pop up to the bottom of the.
I saw a guy here, Watt Sound Lab. He says, Jeff, NBL or ABA? That's a BMX question. So I started off racing NBL. Originally, when I started racing, I stopped freestyling after a bad accident, broke an arm and leg at the same time. But yeah, so I started off NBL and finished up ABA, and now, of course, we're all USA BMX at this point. So.
Oh, see,
can't
that's
believe
some
we
new
didn't-
school BMX. I don't even know nothing about that.
We didn't get to any of the BMX. How did that happen? How did we go all this
Yeah.
time and didn't even hit BMX?
All good.
Well, Jeff sent some pictures, so I'll go through some of the pictures real quick of him racing. He still races a 20-inch, right, Jeff? You don't race a cruiser.
20-inch?
Yeah, I have a 20-inch. So the picture here, this is a picture of me at a state race, and I was in fourth place in this race in the first two straights, and basically I saw a gap in the two leaders, these two guys here, and I literally did a classic high-low and came through the last corner and pushed everything I could coming off the high side of the last berm and just ripped through this triple coming over here and blew right past these guys. And literally once we got to the finish line, and the guy in the yellow turned around and looks at me. He goes, "Where did you come from?" And I was like, "Man, I saw you two guys kind of bobbling back and forth, and I saw my line, and I just took it." So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, what are you riding right now?
So right now I'm riding a custom build. It's a 2012 Redline Triple XL Pro flight frame. Wow. The reason why I ride that frame is because it is at that time, it was the largest 20-inch frame available. So it's literally like, what do they call the S squared version? It's called a limo. So it has a 22 and 3/4 inch top tube. So it's the largest 20-inch I could find. So I'm not super tall. I'm 5'11 and a half, but my torso is, kind of tall. So I have a snap, extended stem. My bars are as high as they can be, and everything else. I figured out that I needed to stretch myself out a little bit longer. So my first bike when I got back into it, this is a Haro Pro XL. That was a 20 and 3/4 inch frame, and I got rid of that guy and went to that Redline. And my buddy that was with me, he was like, "Dude, that frame's going to be way too long. It's going to drag. You're not going to be able to like pull over, jumps when you're going through the line and everything." And as soon as I built it up and I rode it, man, it was like riding a Cadillac, dude. It was amazing. So that's my deal now. It's the Redline.
Most of the guys are still riding 20 inches then?
Yeah, you still have a lot of guys that ride 20-inch. Of course, the cruiser class is big as well. A lot of us older guys, we ride the 20 cruiser class, but I still love 20s. So,
yeah, that's cool. I definitely would have to go bigger than a 20, but I'm afraid to get out there right now because I would hurt myself probably. But that's so cool that you still do that. And we didn't get the picture of what's the picture of you with the AAMP?
Where?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sharing my screen.
Okay, so this is when I worked for MyTech, MTX Extant. And so, back in the day in Phoenix is where all the big guys were. PPI was there, Orion was there, MTX was there. So when I worked for MTX, this is actually the original work area where the amplifiers were produced back in the day, the original like Blue Thunders, Road Thunders, all that stuff. And this is the assembly line. And what they did for a lot of years is when they brought people in for tours, they would literally take an amplifier that was sent in for repairs and they would let you fix it. They would show you exactly, and they would take you through the process of changing out FETs that had burned up, changing out caps, or anything else like that. And you would go through and learn about how amplifiers are made, how they work, things like that. And you would literally desolder, resolder pieces back in and reassemble them and take them down to the end of the line, power them up. Not necessarily like your amp dyno, but there's a AP to actually test the amplifiers. And if your amplifier worked to the spec to make it actually pass the rating that it was, you assembled it, you polished it up, you boxed it up, and that was your gift to take home. So that was
that's
pretty cool.
awesome.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the so the MTX TA series. This was a very neat series of amplifier because all of the 4 channels were bridgeable down to 1 channel. So you could take the TA 604 and TA, I want to say it was a 80 TA 604 and TA 1004. So your 1000-watt 4 channel and your 600-watt 4 channel and your 400-watt 4 channel and 2-ohm mono would be a 400-watt mono, a 600-watt mono, or a 1000-watt mono. So what I was working on here was the 4-channel version, and my ex-brother-in-law actually still has that amplifier in his truck, so still working.
Sweet. That's probably literally, Rob, the only thing that we could have done at Kicker that would have made that tour any better.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that's sweet. That's really neat. I hate the thought that a lot of that stuff has gone overseas. I understand the economics, involved with keeping things, the price points that they're at and things like that. But
there's a question here. This guy, Third Era, he says, "What's your secret Mike Jones song to use when getting your mid bass to sub transition smoothly?" So let me tell you the story about that. If you don't remember from the show I did with Dean. So a buddy of mine, Justin Polk, he had a Chevy Tahoe with a huge system in it, Iasca Mecca competition system. And when we were building cars out of my shop, we built a lot of vehicles with dual mid-bass drivers. And we used a lot of MB Court, QSD, QSC, PCS, the wet powder coated, the gray cone drivers. And those, when you put 2 6.5s with good power, it was insane mid bass. So I always like very dynamic, lively sounding vehicles, and they would still have pinpoint imaging and sound really good. So that was one of one of the jokes, is that we were driving from Orlando all the way to Ohio for a Iasca Regional, there, Still Valley Regional. And I'm in Justin's truck listening and tuning as we're driving along, and some of the music that was in my on my iPod was Mike Jones. So
Who?
Mike.
I got you.
Right?
Yeah.
So the song, the song is actually off the chopped and screwed version of that. I'd have to go. I don't remember the name of it, but I mean, it was just the mid bass to sub bass. And like I told Justin, like, I need to make your doors sound like the subwoofers are up front in your vehicle. So it was just a process of getting the proper crossover point, getting the proper time alignment into his vehicle, because he had 2 jail 10W6s in the far back of the vehicle. In a Tahoe, it's like, big bass cannon. So between getting the level of the bass in the rear and the mid bass in the front to blend together to make it sound like those 2 10W6s were sitting up front with you, it took some time, but once we got it, I mean, Justin killed his class. I mean, he was the mid bass king for a long time, so it was pretty cool.
And that's the hardest thing to do, is get that mid bass the way you want it. I mean, people are still chasing that today.
Yeah, mid bass to sub bass transition is a huge deal.
Yeah.
So
it is for sure. Well, I think we got a lot of agreement in the chat comments here that Jeff was a great guest, and we agree. And again, thanks for your time, Jeff. We'll let you drop off so that you can join in with the family there. And thanks again for your time. And we will.
Anytime you want to set up again, just let me know, man. I'll try to make it, a priority to get back on for you guys.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that, because we want to talk more about the Prelude and things you're going to do with that, and also get into your BMX stuff that we didn't really get into this time.
We just got to have the amps and ramps show.
Yeah.
One
That's
whole
right.
show.
That's all right. We'll just have to do that. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Jeff, thank you again. And
All right.
talk to you guys
Appreciate it.
soon. See ya.
Thank
Yeah.
you.